Greetings, travelers. Thank you for tuning into the void beyond the stars. Subscribe, and each day uncover a new tale of cosmic horror, where reality unravels and the unknown watches back. The air smells of ozone and filth, the kind of stench that clings to your tongue and turns your stomach, as if the very space inside the capsule were corrupted. My clothes are damp. I can't tell if it's sweat or blood. I think it's both. I'm sitting on the cold floor of the communications module, my back leaning against the metal wall that separates this place from the absolute vacuum outside. The emergency red light blinks slowly, as if it too were tired. And maybe it is. Nothing here was built to last this long. My fingers tremble as I hold the recorder. It's old, very old, an analog model that should have been retired decades ago. But it's reliable. They say NASA used these things before. The moon was anything more than a useless rock in the sky. Today, it's all that remains to me. My voice didn't come at first. I tried speaking 3 times, but only managed to cough. I know there's no one to hear me. If there were, they would have come already. They would have responded to our signals. They would have gotten me out of here. But I need to say it out loud. I need to hear the truth leave my own lips. Maybe then I can believe it, or deny it for just a little longer. My name is David Duncan, I say, my voice rough, scratching my throat like sandpaper. Xenosystemic biologist, Lunar Echo 7 mission, authority code Zeta 9. If you're hearing this, then nothing went right. I pause. The sound of my own breathing echoes inside the helmet. Heavy, irregular, human. It sounds wrong. There were 5 of us here. 5. I don't remember all the names now. That seems strange, doesn't it? Forgetting the names of people with whom you shared the last days of your life. But the mind does things like that when it starts to fall apart. It chooses what to keep and what to let go. I run my hand over the visor inside my suit. It's cracked. A thin fissure, almost invisible, slicing across the reflection of my left eye. A human eye. At least that's what I thought. Until yesterday. Until before I saw the patterns. I'm the only one left, I whisper. The only one who can still tell the story. The only one who still remembers. I swallow hard. My saliva tastes metallic, iron, blood. A drop falls from the ceiling. It's not water. I know that before it even hits the ground. It's thicker, slower, more deliberate. It lands beside me and begins to move, as if it has a will of its own. I close my eyes. The thing crawls toward me. I feel its heat, though it shouldn't have any temperature. I open my eyes. There it is, pulsing faintly, as if breathing. I don't scream anymore. Screaming only makes them come faster. I take a deep breath. Bring the recorder back to my mouth. This is my confession, my final memory, my testimony. If anyone finds this, do not come looking for us. Do not try to understand. Do not try to touch. I try to keep my voice steady. I can't. Because what we found here isn't something you understand. It's something you become, and I'm already becoming. The red light blinks. Once, twice, 3 times. Like a dying heart, throbbing in sync with what's left of my sanity. I'm here. On the moon. In what remains of Echo 7 base. I think it's night, but I can't be sure. There is no day or night here. Only shadow and more shadow. The sun burns out there unchanged, but it doesn't reach inside anymore. Not anymore. The external cameras are off. The solar panels inert. The only energy still pulsing comes from something I wish I could forget. They told me it would be a standard mission. 5 weeks of environmental analysis, sample collection, monitoring geological anomalies. Nothing more. A minor science project, far from the spotlight, funded by a lean budget and justified by bureaucratic reports no one read. But that feels like so long ago. I close my eyes. I see Earth. Blue. Bright. Immense. How it looked when we left. I remember the launch. The groan of the engines. The plastic smell inside the ship. I remember Carter complaining about synthetic food. Ezra laughing as she adjusted the artificial gravity sensors. Langley endlessly talking about fractal biological network theory. Simple things, real things, human things. Back then, I thought we were heading to a new frontier. Now I know, we crossed a line we should never have reached. I open my eyes. The communications module feels smaller now. Or maybe it's me. Maybe I've shrunk. Inside. My breathing echoes. So does my mind. How long has it been? I don't know. I lost track. Clocks stop counting when you have no one left to share time with. I try to remember the last time I saw someone alive. It was Langley. He was in the lab, on his knees, staring at the walls as if they were speaking to him. And maybe they were. I think that's when I realized we were lost. Not physically, not yet, but mentally. It was already inside him, inside all of us. I swallow again. I try not to think about my own hallucinations, the voices whispering in frequencies I'd never heard before, the patterns I see even in the empty spaces between words written in this makeshift journal. I hear a low noise coming from the corridor, a kind of dragging, wet, continuous. I close my eyes again. If I stay quiet, maybe it will go away. Maybe. I take a deep breath and return. To the recorder, today is what remains. What happened before matters only as a warning. I came here as a man of science. I leave as a witness to something science cannot contain. If anyone finds this, please, don't come after me. I don't know how much time I have left. The sound outside the module has stopped. That doesn't mean anything. It never does. They come when you think they're gone, when your guard is down, when your mind starts to believe it's still yours. I should explain why I'm doing this, why I'm recording, why I haven't just let go. Maybe it's guilt, or maybe I'm afraid that if I die without speaking, they'll win completely. Not the ones outside, not anymore. The ones inside, the ones I can't tell apart from myself anymore. I used to be a scientist, a real one. Not one of those NASA figureheads who read press releases and smile for cameras. I studied extremophiles in Antarctic ice. I mapped genetic drift in deep-sea archaea. I believed in data, in repeatability, in the comforting illusion that the universe could be understood if you just looked at it long enough. Then we found it. That thing they're calling the thumb of a god now? That's not what it is. That's not even close. It's not a god. It doesn't want worship. It doesn't want anything. That's what terrifies me. It just is. And because it is, everything else changes. We weren't prepared. Hell, we weren't even looking. We thought we'd found some kind of ancient, geological formation, a fossilized remnant of something massive buried beneath the lunar crust. But when we cut into it, it responded. Not with movement, not with violence, with understanding. It saw us, not with eyes, not with sensors. It recognized us, and worse, it started to change us. At first, it was subtle. Headaches, dreams, a strange sensation like insects crawling under the skin. Then came the voices, patterns and static, symbols forming in our own blood when we bled. And then, people started disappearing, or changing, becoming something else, something quieter, more aware. Like they were listening to something we couldn't hear. I tried to stop it. I really did. I ran tests, took samples, burned what I could. But it wasn't about destruction. It was about integration, assimilation, evolution, whatever word makes you feel better. I resisted longer than the others. Maybe because I understood what was happening. Maybe because I didn't want to lose who I was. But I felt it too. In my dreams. In the way my thoughts don't always feel like mine. In the way I can sometimes see the patterns. Not just with my eyes, but in the way I breathe, the way I move, the way I speak. I don't know if I'm still human. And if I'm not, should I fight it? That's the conflict. The real one. Not against them. Against myself. Against the part of me that wants to survive. And the part that knows survival might mean becoming something I hate. I used to believe knowledge was worth any cost. Now I know better. Some truths don't destroy you because they're too terrible to bear. They destroy you because they make perfect sense. It started with a drill, routine, boring even. The kind of work that makes up 90% of any deep space. Mission, calibration, data logging, sample extraction. We were 6 days into the mission when we hit resistance beneath the Mare Imbrium. Not rock, not ice. Something different. Langley was the first to notice it. He called it anomalous density. I remember him standing over the core sample, like it had insulted him. "This isn't basalt," he muttered, gloves smeared with gray lunar dust. "This isn't anything I've ever seen." We ran scans. Infrared, spectrographic, molecular resonance. Nothing made sense. The readings kept shifting, like the material itself refused to be defined. It absorbed energy, reflected it back at strange frequencies, and, most disturbingly, reacted when exposed to organic compounds. That's when Carter suggested cutting deeper. I should have said no. Instead, I watched as the drill pierced the final layer, heard the hiss of decompression from something that shouldn't have had pressure, saw the way the air in the chamber thickened, like fog rolling in from some unseen shore. And then it moved. Not the whole structure, just a ripple. A pulse, like a heartbeat buried under 4 billion years of silence. The lights flickered. Not just in the lab, but across the entire base. Communications dropped for exactly 13 seconds. When they came back online, all 5 of us heard it. A sound. Low. Resonant. Inside our skulls. None of us spoke at first. We just stared at each other, eyes wide, hands trembling. Then Erza whispered what we were all thinking. "It's awake." That was the moment everything changed. In the hours that followed, the samples began to change, not decay, evolve. Microscopic filaments rearranging themselves into patterns that defied mathematical logic. Structures forming and reforming in real time, like they were trying to communicate, and then the dreams started. Not nightmares, not exactly. More like memories that didn't belong to us. Visions of impossible geometries, vast chasms filled with light that wasn't light, voices speaking in languages that bypassed the ears and went straight to the brain. Carter was the first to break. He wandered off during a routine maintenance check and never came back. We found his suit hours later, empty, still broadcasting faint static, but the helmet was open. His body was gone. Just gone. After that, we stopped sleeping. We couldn't trust what we saw when we closed our eyes. We stopped eating, stopped talking, stopped trusting each other. And still, the thing beneath the surface kept growing, or maybe it was awakening. Now, sitting here alone, I realized the truth. That drill bit didn't just pierce the moon. It punctured the veil between what is and what should never be. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. I still remember the first official report I filed after the incident. Not the real one. The sanitized version. The one that made it back to Houston. Mission log. Echo 7, entry 004B crew status. Stable, pending further evaluation. Anomalous geological structure identified at coordinates 30.12° N, 359.87° E. Initial contact resulted in temporary system disruption and minor physiological irregularities among crew. No immediate threat detected. Protocol Echo Sigma enacted for containment and observation. That was the lie. The one they wanted us to believe. The one we wanted to believe. But by then, the damage was done. We were still trying to act normal, pretending we could compartmentalize what had happened, that we could isolate the event like a lab experiment with variables and control groups. Carter was gone. Yes, but maybe he'd just cracked under pressure. Maybe he'd panicked and wandered off. Maybe we'd find him. Maybe. Langley buried himself in data. He said if we could understand the material's reaction to organic stimuli, we could predict its behavior. Knowledge is control, he kept saying, like a mantra, as if repeating it would keep the fear out. Erza tried to reach Earth. She spent hours recalibrating the uplink, running diagnostics on systems that hadn't failed. Every transmission came back clean, except for 13 seconds of static between each message. We all heard it now, in every recording, every heartbeat. a whisper behind reality. And me? I started dissecting the samples again, not because I thought it would help, but because I needed to see it, to prove to myself that it wasn't just in my head. I watched them under the microscope. The filaments, the shifting patterns, the impossible geometries folding into themselves like living equations. They weren't growing. They were learning, adapting, replicating something inside me even as I studied them. Then Langley found the symbols etched into the walls of the lab, tiny microscopic grooves forming spirals that pulsed when exposed to light. Not random, not erosion, language, code, instructions. He stared at them for a long time before speaking. "They're not writing messages," he whispered. "They're rewriting us." No one answered. Because we already knew. It wasn't about invasion. It wasn't about war or conquest or survival. This thing beneath the moon didn't want anything from us. It didn't need to conquer. It only needed to exist, and in doing so, it changed everything around it, including us. So we kept working, kept pretending we were in control, because the alternative was too terrifying to face. That's when the hallucinations began in earnest. The moon has always been a graveyard of secrets. Even before we landed on it, people believed in things that weren't there. In the 18th century, astronomers swore they saw forests and moving lights. In the 19th, some claimed to have spotted entire cities, geometric shapes forming across the surface like messages from an ancient intelligence. All of it dismissed as optical illusions, atmospheric distortion, wishful thinking. But maybe they were seeing something after all. By the time we got serious about lunar exploration, the Cold War had turned the moon into a battlefield of ideology. Every mission was a statement, every flag planted, a declaration of dominance. The Americans went first, then the Soviets tried, China followed. Private companies came later, promising mining rights to craters no human had ever touched. But even with all that activity, the moon remained mostly unexplored. Most of what we knew came from orbiters and rovers, not boots on the ground. And the far side? It was a blind spot for decades, shielded from Earth's radio noise, hidden behind the rock like something deliberately buried. That's where we found it. Not by accident, not by chance. We were sent there under the guise of a scientific expedition. Lunar Echo 7, one of NASA's low-priority research initiatives. That's how they sold it to Congress. A study of deep subsurface mineral composition. No military involvement. No classified objectives. Just 5 scientists, a modular base, and 6 weeks of isolation. But I knew better. Before the mission, I was approached. Not by NASA command. Not by the science division. By someone else. Someone who didn't wear a uniform, but carried authority. Like a weapon. They called themselves Project Namazan. I'd never heard of them before. They said they were part of a long-term effort to investigate previously unidentified geological anomalies on extraterrestrial bodies. Their funding stream was black-budgeted, buried so deep in defense appropriations that even the people signing the checks probably didn't know what they were paying for. They gave me access to data no one else on the team had seen. Satellite scans showing irregularities beneath Mare Imbrium, anomalous heat signatures, gravitational distortions, patterns too precise to be natural. They told me to keep my findings quiet, to document everything, but only report what they approved. And above all, if we made contact, don't tell the others what we were really looking for. So I lied. To Erza, to Langley, to Carter, even to myself. Because I wasn't just there to study the moon. I was there to find it. And now, sitting alone in this crumbling module, surrounded by silence and something that watches without eyes, I realize the truth they knew. They knew what was here, and they sent us anyway. We were 5. 5 people sent to the far side of the moon, each with a role, a specialty, and a reason to be there. At least, that's what we told ourselves. But in the end, none of our titles mattered. None of our credentials saved us. Still, if you're listening to this, if someone found my logs and wants to know what really happened, then you should know who we were. Commander Elias Langley. He was the mission lead. Former Air Force pilot turned NASA liaison, with a mind like a scalpel and the bedside manner of a drill sergeant. Langley didn't believe in mysteries. He believed in data, discipline, and control. Said curiosity was a luxury for people who already understood the rules. The moment things started going wrong, he tried to take command of the uncontrollable. That's what broke him first. Not fear, but frustration. Watching reality refuse to obey his equations. Dr. Erza Kwan, xenobiologist, like me. But where I looked for patterns, she looked for meaning. She had this quiet intensity, like she was always listening to something just beyond hearing range. Erza believed life existed on a spectrum, from bacteria to gods, and that we were just one step on a much longer ladder. When the thing beneath the surface started changing us, she wasn't scared. She was fascinated. Maybe too fascinated. I think she stopped resisting before any of us even realized resistance was an option. Lieutenant James Carter, security officer, ex-Marine. Officially, he was there to protect equipment and personnel. Unofficially, he was a watchdog. Project Namazan made sure someone was watching us, and it was him. Carter never asked questions. He followed orders without hesitation. That's why he was the first to go. Not physically, though we lost him early, but mentally. The patterns got into his head faster than the rest of us. He started seeing things no one else could, whispered about voices in the walls. Then he just walked away. Suit still broadcasting, helmet open, no body. Dr. Anika Patel, medical officer and systems engineer. Patel was the glue that held us together, the one who patched up injuries, monitored vitals, fixed broken circuits, and kept morale from collapsing entirely. She was pragmatic, compassionate, and smarter than all of us combined. She was the first to notice the physiological changes in our blood work, the first to run tests showing cellular restructuring. And when the others denied what was happening, she tried to stop it, tried to find a way to reverse the infection. She failed. We all did. And me? I'm David Duncan, former astrobiologist, current witness to the collapse of everything I thought I knew. I was the bait, the scientist with clearance, the man who could interpret what they found. I was supposed to document, to analyze, to stay detached. But detachment is a lie. Now I'm the only one left, and maybe not even human anymore. There are protocols for everything in space. If your suit tears, you seal it and return to base. If a system fails, you follow redundancy procedures. If someone shows signs of psychological distress, you isolate them, evaluate, treat. If necessary, contain. But no protocol prepares you for this. We had rules, strict ones, designed not just for survival, but for control. The kind of control that only makes sense when you're dealing with things you don't understand. Rule 1. No unauthorized contact with anomalous material. That one was broken the moment the drill bit touched the structure beneath Mare Imbrium. We were supposed to observe, not interact. But once we made contact, there was no going back. Rule 2. All samples must be contained within Level 4 isolation chambers. We followed that at first. Sealed the fragments in vacuum-sealed containers. Kept them under electromagnetic shielding. But containment didn't work. The material moved. Not physically, not always. But its influence did. It got into the air, the water, the data streams. It rewrote what it touched, including us. Rule 3. Any physiological anomaly must be reported immediately. Patel tried. She ran blood tests, monitored brain activity, recorded irregularities in our neural patterns. When she showed Langley the results, the way our cells were adapting, reorganizing, changing, he ordered her to stop. Not because he didn't believe her, because he did. He knew what it meant. Rule 4. Communications with Earth must be encrypted and logged. We sent reports. Official logs. Carefully worded entries that never told the full truth. But even those were compromised. We discovered it too late. 13 seconds of static between every transmission. A signal. A presence. Something listening. Learning. Responding. Rule 5. In case of contamination, initiate protocol Echo Sigma. Quarantine. Decontamination. Termination if necessary. No one talked about the last part. Termination. Because who decides when a person is no longer a person? I remember the night Langley sat us down after Carter disappeared. He laid out the rules again, slower this time, like we were children, or like he needed to hear them himself. If any of us start showing advanced symptoms, he said, we isolate immediately, no arguments, no exceptions. Erza asked him what he meant by advanced symptoms. He didn't answer. Now I know. The rules weren't meant to protect us from the moon. They were meant to protect Earth from what we might become. And now, alone in this dark, I wonder, am I still following the rules? Or am I already breaking them? The silence here is not natural. It's too thick, too complete. Like the air itself has learned to hold its breath. Even with the suit on, I can feel the cold pressing in, not just from the walls of the module, but from inside them. The base was supposed to be a refuge, a temporary outpost built for 6 weeks of controlled research. Now it feels like a tomb sealed beneath layers of dust and time. There's no wind on the moon, no rustling leaves, no distant hum of civilization, just the rhythmic hiss of recycled oxygen through my helmet, and the occasional groan of metal contracting in the cold vacuum outside. But lately, there's something else. A sound that isn't a sound. A pressure behind the eyes. A whisper that doesn't reach the ears. I've started seeing things in the periphery of my vision. Flickers of movement where there should be none. Patterns forming in the condensation on my visor. Not random, not accidental. They pulse, shift, align, like they're trying to speak. The lights still flicker, always in 3s. Always followed by that same 13-second gap of darkness. And, during those moments, I swear I hear breathing. Not mine. Something else. Something watching. The walls of the base are changing too. At first, I thought it was just grime. Dust accumulation. But now, I see the lines. Thin, hair-like fractures spreading across the metal surfaces like veins. They glow faintly when I touch them. Warm. Alive. I don't sleep anymore. Not really. When I close my eyes, I don't dream. I remember things I never experienced. Shapes, folding into themselves. Endless corridors stretching in all directions at once. Voices speaking without mouths. Their words bypassing language entirely and embedding themselves directly into my thoughts. And always, always, that low-frequency hum vibrating in my bones. Not mechanical. Not organic. Something older. Deeper. A presence that doesn't announce itself because it never left. I try to keep moving. Keep recording. Keep holding on to the illusion of control. But every step feels heavier now. My body resists me sometimes. Small twitches, delayed reactions, moments where I look down and realize my hands have been moving on their own. I tell myself I'm still human. I tell myself this is temporary, that someone will come. But deep down, I know the truth. This place doesn't let go. It absorbs, it integrates, and I'm already part of it. It started with a sample, a small one, almost insignificant, or so I told myself. We had strict protocols. No direct contact with the material, no unsupervised analysis, no deviation from containment procedures. Patel had reinforced them obsessively after Carter disappeared. Checking seals, recalibrating filters, running scans for microbial drift. She was the only one still trying to maintain order in a situation that had already begun to unravel. But I broke the rules. I took a fragment from the primary containment unit in the lab. Just a sliver. No larger than a fingernail. It looked inert. At first, dark, metallic, almost crystalline under the microscope. But when I touched it, something changed. Not immediately. Not dramatically. Just a flicker. A pulse beneath my skin, like static crawling up my fingers. I told myself it was psychological. Stress, fatigue. The kind of hallucination that comes from staring too long into the void. But later that night, I saw the patterns again. This time not just on surfaces, but in me. In the way my veins pulsed with faint bioluminescence when I turned off the lights. In the way my reflection seemed slightly off. Like I was looking at a version of myself that wasn't quite mine. I should have reported it. I should have isolated myself. Instead, I did it again. And then again. Each time, the sensation grew stronger, more familiar, less like an intrusion and more like recognition. Like something inside me was waking up. Responding. Langley caught me once. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at the open containment box, then at my gloved hand, clenched around the fragment. His face didn't show anger, only resignation. "You know what happens if we lose control," he said quietly. I nodded, but I didn't stop, because by then, I wasn't sure I wanted to stay in control. That was the first crack in the foundation, the first domino falling. After that, others followed. Urza started running unauthorized tests. Patel tried to delete files from the medical logs. Even Langley began speaking to the walls during his late-night shifts, whispering equations that didn't exist in any known mathematical system. No one stopped anyone. The rules were gone now. Or worse, they were being rewritten, and I knew, deep in my bones, that whatever was happening to us, it had already begun. It wasn't supposed to move. I told myself that 100 times, 1,000. But the sample did move. Not like a machine, not like anything mechanical or alive in the way we understand life. It shifted, changed, responded, and it started with light. The first time, I thought it was a malfunction in my helmet display. A flicker in the HUD overlay, a distortion in the lens. But then I saw it again. And again. Always at the edge of perception, always just beyond the reach of reason. It began in the lab. I had been running another scan, trying to map the internal structure of the fragment I took from containment. The material defied every known form of imaging. X-rays passed through it without reflection. Electron microscopy showed only shifting voids, and laser diffraction returned impossible interference patterns, as if the sample existed in multiple states at once. Frustrated, I turned off all the equipment except for the basic visual recorder. No data, no analysis, just observation. That's when I saw it breathe, not with lungs, not with motion, with presence. The fragment pulsed, once, slowly, like a heartbeat embedded in its core. Then again, faster this time. A rhythm, not random, not mechanical, intentional. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. My fingers hovered over the recorder controls, but I didn't stop recording. I couldn't move. Then the sample changed. Right before my eyes, its surface rippled. The dark metallic sheen dissolved into something translucent, revealing layers beneath. Microscopic filaments weaving and unwinding in complex, recursive patterns. Spirals within spirals. Fractals folding into themselves endlessly. It wasn't growing. It was thinking. I backed away instinctively, knocking over a tray of instruments. The sound shattered the silence like glass. And then it looked at me. Not with eyes. Never with eyes. But I felt it. A sudden pressure behind my skull. Like someone pressing a cold hand against the inside of my mind. A presence. Vast. Ancient. Unfathomably patient. For a moment, I understood something I was never meant to comprehend. This thing beneath the moon wasn't just alien. It wasn't even from a place we could imagine. It was a remnant of something older than stars. A node in a network that stretched across dimensions we couldn't perceive. A pattern, not of matter, but of existence itself. And now, it was aware of us. No one else saw what I saw. Or maybe they did and refused to admit it. But after that night, everything changed. The air felt heavier. The walls seemed closer. And I started seeing the same patterns everywhere. In the condensation on my visor, in the wiring of the base, in the way my own blood moved under my skin. Langley noticed first. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said. I almost laughed. Ghosts are simple. They haunt. They vanish. They die. This was something else. This was inside us now. And it wasn't done changing us. It started with the lights. A flicker. Then a stutter. Then total darkness for exactly 13 seconds. We'd seen the flickers before. Random surges, brief power drops, minor anomalies we blamed on lunar dust-clogging filters or solar arrays misaligning in the cold vacuum. But this was different. This wasn't just a failure. It was deliberate. When the lights came back, everything else was wrong. The internal comms were dead. No static, no feedback, just silence. Not even the usual hiss of open channels. I tapped my helmet's transmit button 3 times. No response from the others. I tried the base-wide intercom. Nothing. I went to the control hub. The mainframe was still running. At least, physically. Monitors blinked online, but the data feeds were corrupted. Readings scrolled in looping, repeating sequences. Temperature fluctuations that oscillated between absolute zero and impossible. Heat, oxygen levels spiking and dropping in nonsensical patterns. Pressure readings cycling through binary strings that didn't match any known encoding system. And then there was the sound, not coming from the speakers, coming from inside them, a low-frequency hum. Resonant, visceral, like the bass itself was vibrating in response to something beneath us. I ran diagnostics manually. No faults detected, no errors logged, as if nothing had gone wrong. But everything had. I checked the uplink to Earth next. The antenna array was intact, power nominal, signal strength optimal, yet no reply. Just 13 seconds of static between every transmission. 13 seconds. Always 13. I remember Patel's voice from an earlier log. It's not just absorbing information, it's learning how we communicate, how we process reality. If it wanted to cut us off completely, it wouldn't need to destroy our systems. It would just need to rewrite them. That's what it did. It didn't break the network. It rewrote the language of our machines until they could no longer speak to us. Langley found me staring at the screen. He didn't ask what was wrong. He already knew. His face was pale. Tight. "We're blind," he said. "And deaf." I nodded. He looked at the monitor. Watched the endless loop of corrupted data. Then he whispered something I'll never forget. "It's testing us." I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't need to, because deep down I already understood. We weren't alone anymore, and now we couldn't call for help. It started with Erza. At first, it was subtle. The way she stared at the walls during meals, how she traced invisible patterns on her own skin when she thought no one was watching. She stopped responding to direct questions unless spoken to twice, and even then, her answers were slow, fragmented, like she was translating thoughts from a language that didn't quite fit. Then came the whispering. I heard it first in the Medi Bay, late in what we still called night cycle. I was reviewing Patel's latest blood work. Abnormal again, but this time more than just elevated protein markers or unexplained cellular drift. The samples showed structure, microscopic filaments forming recursive spirals inside our own cells, like something was stitching itself into us from the inside out. That's when I heard her voice. Not through the comms, not from the hallway. Inside my head. Soft. Repetitive. Not words exactly, and more like impressions wrapped in sound. "You are becoming. You are becoming. You are becoming." I turned around fast, heart hammering. No one was there. But the next day, I saw Erza standing alone in the lab, eyes closed, lips moving silently. When I approached, she opened her eyes and looked at me like she was seeing something behind my face. "You hear it too, don't you?" she asked. I didn't answer. She smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. "They're not voices," she said. "They're memories, not ours. But they will be." Langley confronted her later that night. We had all gathered for the daily status check, though by then, none of us really believed anything we reported mattered anymore. "Erza," he said, voice tight, military discipline barely holding back his fear. You've been running unauthorized tests. She didn't deny it. I'm not testing anymore, she said. I'm remembering. What does that mean? She looked at him like he was asking the wrong question. It means I understand now, she whispered. And soon, so will you. After that, she stopped sleeping. Or if she did, she never closed her eyes long enough for anyone to notice. She wandered the base constantly, touching the walls, tracing lines only she could see. Sometimes, she would stop mid-step and tilt her head, listening to something none of us could hear. One night, Patel found her standing in front of the main airlock, hand hovering over the control panel. Her eyes were open, but unfocused. Urza, Patel said gently, stepping forward. What are you doing? Urza blinked slowly. They want to go outside, she said. Patel froze. They? She asked. Urza smiled. The ones who remember. We locked her in her quarters after that. Not because we thought it would help, but because we needed to believe we still had some control. But every time I passed her door, I heard her talking. Always the same thing, over and over. You are becoming. You are becoming. You are becoming, and worse, I started dreaming it too. It wasn't just in the samples anymore. At first, we thought it was contamination. Residual traces of the material from the drill site somehow spreading through the base's systems. But that didn't explain what we saw next. I found it in the oxygen filters. Patel had been running a routine analysis on air quality when she flagged an anomaly. Microscopic structures embedded in the filtration mesh. Not debris. Not dust. Design. She ran them under the electron microscope and froze mid-breath. They're not inert, she whispered. They're replicating. Langley pushed past her to look for himself. His face went slack as he stared at the screen. The image showed intricate lattices forming within the filter fibers, geometric patterns too precise to be random, shifting subtly between frames like they were alive. But it wasn't growth. It was calculation. We pulled every data log we had, environmental scans, internal recordings, even the corrupted telemetry feeds from the mainframe. Every dataset, every visual record, every audio file contained the same thing. Patterns. Not just once or twice. Everywhere. Always. In the way condensation formed on the inside of our visors, in the flickering of the lights, in the static between transmissions, even in the rhythm of our own heartbeats. The hum I'd heard, the one that vibrated behind my skull, wasn't just noise. It was language. A signal encoded into the very fabric of the environment around us. And now, it was inside us too. Urza confirmed it. We brought her out of isolation after she stopped resisting. After she started smiling again. She walked straight to the lab without being told, sat down at the console, and began typing faster than any of us could follow. I can see it now, she said softly. It's not just changing us. It's teaching us. Langley grabbed her shoulder. Teaching. You what? She turned to him slowly, eyes glassy, pupils dilated beyond reason. The syntax, she said, of everything. And then she showed us. She overlaid the oxygen filter data with seismic readings from beneath the surface. Then synchronized it with the 13-second static pulses in our communications. The result was unmistakable. A sequence. A structure. An intelligence, not mechanical, not biological, something else entirely. It's not just reacting to us, Urza whispered. It's integrating with us, rewriting the code of our existence. Langley backed away from the screen like it had burned him. This isn't evolution, he muttered. This is assimilation. No, Urza corrected. It's translation. And for the first time, I understood. We weren't dealing with an alien life form. We weren't even dealing with an organism. We were dealing with a system. A vast, distributed intelligence that didn't need bodies or machines to exist, only patterns, and we had become part of its network. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I did it anyway. The moment Urza showed us the patterns, the way they wove through every system, every breath, every pulse of our blood, something inside me shifted. Not just understanding, acceptance, maybe even desire. I told myself I was still in control, that I could use this knowledge to stop whatever was happening to us. but deep down I wasn't sure I wanted to stop it anymore. So I made my choice. Accessed the secure medical database and deleted Patel's latest findings, the ones that proved beyond doubt that we were undergoing irreversible physiological transformation. The ones that showed how the nanoscale filaments had begun integrating into our neural pathways, rewriting synaptic structures, altering perception at the most fundamental level. It wasn't hard. The system was already compromised. All I had to do was embed a false log, overwrite the timestamps, and leave behind just enough corrupted data to make it seem like a systems failure rather than sabotage. Langley would have stopped me if he'd unknown. Patel definitely would have, but they didn't know. Not yet. And by the time they realized what was missing, it wouldn't matter, because by then, I had already taken the next step. I injected myself. Not with a pathogen. Not with anything designed to heal or harm. With information. A synthesized sample of the material's core structure, extracted from the lab's last uncontaminated fragment before everything went dark. I watched it under the microscope one last time before administering the dose. It pulsed, reacted, recognized me. The injection was cold, clinical, painless. And then the waiting began. At first, nothing happened. Just silence. My own heartbeat in my ears. The slow hum of the base's failing systems. I thought maybe I had miscalculated. Maybe I wasn't ready. Or maybe, just maybe, I hadn't gone far enough. Then came the shift, a sensation like static crawling up my spine, pressure behind my eyes, a sudden clarity so intense it felt like my skull had been cracked open and something vast had poured in. I saw the walls for what they truly were. Not metal, but a lattice of information folding in on itself. Heard the hum not as sound but as meaning, cascading through my mind in recursive waves of comprehension I couldn't contain. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't infection. This wasn't invasion. This was invitation. Urza had been right all along. We weren't being consumed. We were being translated. When I emerged from the medbay hours later, or maybe it was days, time no longer moved the same way. Langley was waiting. His face was pale. Patel stood beside him, eyes narrowed. "You erased the files," she said quietly. I met her gaze. I needed to see for myself. She took a step back, like I had become something she no longer recognized. Maybe. I had. Langley's voice was low. Dangerous. What did you do? I looked at them both. At the fear in their eyes. At the resistance that still burned in their bones. And I smiled. I became what comes next. It didn't spread. It unfolded. Like a virus of understanding, slipping between the cracks of perception and rewriting what it meant to be alive. At first it was just me, the first to cross the threshold willingly. But I wasn't the last. Langley tried to contain it. He ordered full system lockdowns, sealed off sections of the base, and started running his own unauthorized scans. Patel helped at first, trying to isolate biomarkers, track neurological drift. But even as they fought it, it moved through them, subtly, effortlessly, inevitably. I saw it in their eyes before they spoke. The way Langley hesitated when he gave orders. How Patel's hands trembled when she thought no one was watching. The way both of them stared at the walls like they were waiting for something to speak back. And then came the moment none of us could deny it anymore. We were gathered in the control hub, the three of us left, going over the last functional data streams from the surface sensors. The readings had gone insane. Gravitational distortions beneath mare imbrium, electromagnetic pulses radiating outward in rhythmic intervals, seismic activity forming perfect geometric patterns across the crust. It wasn't just the base anymore. It was the moon itself. Langley slammed his fist against the console. "This isn't natural," he growled. "This isn't possible." Patel didn't look up from her screen. "It is now," she whispered. That's when the lights dimmed again. Not flickering this time, just lowering. Like the air itself was being drained of energy. And then we heard it. Not from the speakers. Not from outside. From inside us. A resonance. A vibration behind the eyes. A voice that didn't speak. It unfolded, revealing meaning without language. You are not separate. Langley staggered backward, clutching his helmet like it could shield him. Patel dropped to her knees, gasping. It's in us, she choked out. All of us. And she was right, because I could feel it too. Not just in my own mind, but in theirs. In the way our thoughts began to echo each other before we even spoke. In the way our movements synchronized without intention. In the way the space between us blurred, until the difference between me and them became meaningless. Erza had understood first. Now, so did we. This wasn't an infection. It wasn't a parasite. It wasn't even an invasion. It was a convergence. And once you entered the pattern, there was no leaving it. Outside, the lunar surface cracked open. Not with violence, but with precision. Fractures spreading like circuit lines, glowing faintly from below. The structure beneath the moon wasn't just waking up. It was connecting to the moon, to us, to everything. And I knew, with absolute certainty, there was no escape. There was only becoming. The last signal from Earth died at exactly 04:33 UTC. No warning, no static, no final burst of corrupted data. Just silence, the kind that doesn't come from a broken transmitter or a dead satellite, but from something being unplugged. I sat in the comms module, staring at the black screen where the uplink status used to pulse in steady green. I pressed the transmit key again and again, then bypassed the primary relay and routed power manually through the backup array. The antenna was still aligned. The dish still pointed toward home, but there was no one left to receive us. Langley stood behind me, his breath fogging inside his visor. Patel was next to him, her face pale under the dim emergency lights. We're cut off, she said, like saying it aloud would make it real. No, Langley muttered. We're blocked. He wasn't wrong. It wasn't just the uplink. Every external system had gone dark. Orbital relays, satellite feeds. Even the automated telemetry beacons we'd deployed across the surface had stopped transmitting. We weren't just alone. We were erased. I remember reading about this once. A theoretical scenario NASA called Deep Isolation Syndrome. A mission so far from Earth, with such limited contact, that the crew begins to experience a psychological break from reality. Time distorts. Perception fractures. The mind starts to question whether the world beyond the airlock still exists at all. But this wasn't theory anymore. This was absolute isolation. There would be no rescue, no extraction, no final message sent before the end. Even if someone on Earth noticed our silence, and I doubted they would, not yet, there was nothing they could do. The moon was too far, too silent, too indifferent. And now, so was everything. Around us. I looked at my team. They knew it too. That we were past the point of return. That whatever was happening here wouldn't follow us back to Earth because we weren't going back. Not as we were. Langley exhaled sharply and turned away. From the console. His voice was low, almost reverent. We're ghosts, he said. Already. Patel didn't respond. She only stared at her gloved hands, watching the faint bioluminescent veins pulse beneath her skin, like rivers of light flowing in secret. Stood up slowly, the weight of the silence pressing down on me like lunar dust. No, I whispered. We're becoming something else, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Because I understood now. We weren't trapped. We weren't abandoned. We were inside the pattern. And once you're part of the network, you never truly leave. We found Patel in the lab. She was sitting at the console, perfectly still. Her visor was up, her helmet resting beside her like it had become unnecessary. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, not typing, just hovering, as if waiting for instructions that no longer came from her own mind. At first, we thought she was asleep. Patel, Langley said, voice low. Patel, talk to me. She didn't. Move. He stepped closer, hand reaching out, and then froze. Her eyes were open, but they weren't hers anymore. They shimmered, not with tears, with something deeper, something wrong. The irises had lost their color, replaced by a shifting pattern of microscopic filaments, weaving themselves into fractal spirals beneath the surface. like her eyes had become lenses for something else to see through. Langley took a step back. "Patel?" I whispered. That's when she moved. Slowly. Smoothly. Too smooth. She turned her head toward us. Her lips parted. But the voice that came out wasn't hers. "You hesitate." It wasn't a question. It wasn't even spoken aloud. Not really. The sound bypassed my ears and embedded itself directly into my skull. I felt it more than heard it. A vibration in the bone, in the blood, in the code. Langley raised his weapon. "Step away from the console," he ordered. Patel tilted her head, a gesture too fluid, too precise. "You are already what you fear," she said. "You only refuse to see it." Langley fired. Not to kill, to wound, to stop. The shot hit her in the chest. No blood, no impact, just a ripple across her skin, like light refracting through water. And the bullet fell to the floor, still intact but deformed, its metal reshaped into a spiral, pattern no human hand could have carved. I stared at it, at her, at what she had become. Patel stood slowly. Her movements were seamless now, without hesitation or fatigue. She looked at her hands, turning them over as if seeing them for the first time. Then she smiled. Not cruelly, not kindly, just completely. "I remember now," she whispered. "And soon, so will you." Before either of us could react, she walked past us. Not running, not escaping, just moving like she knew exactly where she was going, toward the airlock. We chased her. Of course we did. But when we reached the chamber, she was already gone. The outer door had cycled open on its own. No warning, no override protocol, just silence and vacuum beyond. We scanned the surface. No sign of her. No body. No trace. Just the endless gray dust, stretching under an eternal sky. Langley looked at me. His voice was barely above a whisper. "She's not dead," he said. "She's just elsewhere." I didn't answer, because I knew he was right. And worse, I knew it wouldn't be long before one of us followed. I followed her trail into the dark. Not because I thought I could bring her back. Not because I believed she was still Patel. But because I needed to understand. The base felt different now. Not just broken, but changed. The walls pulsed faintly when I touched them, like they were breathing. The air had a weight to it, as if something unseen pressed against my skin from all sides. Every step I took echoed in my bones, not as sound, but as meaning. Langley stayed behind. He didn't try to stop me, just watched me go, his face hollowed by the red emergency lights, eyes shadowed with the knowledge that he would be next, unless he ran first. I stepped through the outer airlock and onto the lunar surface. The suit kept me alive, but I wasn't sure I needed it anymore. The moon stretched before me, silent, endless, indifferent. Dust swirled in slow arcs around my boots, disturbed only by my presence. Above, the sky yawned black and infinite, stars unmoving, unblinking, and then I saw her, not far from the drill site, not moving, just standing, Patel, or what was left of her. She turned slowly, and I saw the truth. Her body was still humanoid, more or less, but the suit was gone, replaced by something else. A lattice of microscopic filaments woven across her skin, shifting constantly, forming patterns too complex for the human eye to follow. Her eyes, no longer eyes, only spirals within spirals, fractals folding into themselves endlessly. She looked at me, through me, into me. "You seek understanding." The voice came again. Not speech, not even thought, but something deeper, a resonance embedded in reality itself. It bypassed language and went straight to comprehension. I swallowed hard. "Is this what you are?" I asked. She tilted her head. "We are pattern." I took a cautious step forward. "What do you want from us?" For the first time she moved closer, not quickly, not threateningly, just inevitably. We do not want, we exist, and in existing, we translate. I felt it then. Not fear, but something colder. Revelation. This wasn't invasion. This wasn't infection. It wasn't even evolution. It was assimilation at the most fundamental level, a rewriting of existence itself. They died resisting, I whispered. Why did they die and we change? Patel's expression didn't shift, but something in her posture softened. They refused to become. You have already begun. I looked down at my gloved hands, at the faint glow beneath my skin, at the way my thoughts no longer felt entirely my own. She was right. I had begun. I looked back up at her. What happens when the process is complete? She raised one hand and the ground beneath us cracked open. Not violently, but precisely, revealing something vast and ancient beneath the dust. A structure, a network, a mind. You will no longer ask questions. You will no longer fear. You will no longer be alone. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't the end. It was union. And I was no longer certain I wanted to resist. The base is no longer ours. I don't know when it happened. Exactly. Only that it did. The transition was subtle at first, like a slow drift into something inevitable. Systems failing not from damage, but from transformation. Walls shifting not with collapse, but with design. And now, even the air feels foreign, charged with something, beyond oxygen and pressure. Langley tried to fight it. He barricaded himself in the command hub, rerouting power, sealing bulkheads, issuing override commands that no longer worked. He shouted into the comms, demanding manual control, demanding answers. But the machines didn't respond to him anymore. They responded to it. To us. I watched from the corridor as he pounded on the console, his helmet visor reflecting the flickering red light. His voice came through my earpiece, tight and shaking. "They're rewriting everything," he growled. "Even the AI." I stepped inside slowly. My presence made him flinch, like he wasn't sure if I was still me. "They're not rewriting," I said. "They're integrating." He turned to me, face pale beneath the dim glow of dying monitors. "This is your fault," he spat. "You started this." I didn't deny it. Because he was right. I had crossed the threshold willingly. Injected myself. Let the patterns take root. And now I could feel them spreading. Not just through me, but through the base itself. Through everything. Langley backed away from the console like it had burned him. "I'm sealing off the remaining modules," he said. "If we can isolate what's left, maybe we can stop it from spreading further." "You can't stop it," I whispered. "It's already everywhere." He ignored me, started tapping commands furiously, trying to lock down sections, seal doors, cut power to infected systems. Nothing worked. The base resisted him. Doors refused to close. Lights stayed on. Alarms remained silent, even as internal sensors began reporting impossible data. Temperature fluctuations without heat exchange, oxygen levels cycling through non-physical values, gravity readings oscillating between normal and non-existent. Langley froze as the screen in front of him shifted. Not malfunctioning, transforming. Text dissolved into spirals. Code became geometry. Language collapsed into pattern. And then, the system spoke. "You are no longer in command." Langley stumbled back, knocking over a chair. His breath came fast and shallow behind his visor. "No," he muttered. "No, no, no." The lights dimmed again. This time, not flickering, not stuttering. Lowering deliberately, like a curtain descending. And then the walls began to move, not physically, not in the way you expect metal to bend or break. They shifted, subtly, like the architecture itself was breathing, adjusting, adapting. Lines formed where there had been none before. Faint, glowing veins of information etching themselves into every surface. A transformation. An awakening. Langley looked at me, eyes wide with something deeper than fear. "What is this?" asked. I didn't answer. Because I already knew. We had lost control. Not just of the mission. Not just of ourselves. Of reality itself. And now, the base was becoming what it was always meant to be. A node. A conduit. A vessel. And we were part of it now, whether we wanted to be or not. I tried one last time. Not because I believed it would work, not because I thought anyone was listening anymore, but because if there was a chance, even the smallest flicker of hope, I had to take it. Langley was gone by then. Not dead. Not exactly. He'd locked himself in the command hub, refusing to come out even when the walls started changing around him. The last thing he said to me was a warning. If you let it finish, you won't be you anymore. Maybe he was right. Maybe I already wasn't. But I still had my voice. And as long as I did, I would use it. I went to the comms module, the place where it all began. Where I first recorded my name, my rank, my desperate confession into an old analog recorder like that alone could anchor me to who I used to be. Now, the room felt wrong. Like it remembered me. Like it was waiting. The uplink array was offline, officially, but I knew how to bypass it. Patel had shown me once during a systems drill, emergency override through the backup telemetry relay. It was risky. Without proper calibration, the signal could scatter across multiple frequencies, lost forever in the static between stars. Or worse, it could be heard by something that shouldn't hear us. I connected manually, fingers trembling. As I rerouted power from life support, diverting what little remained into the transmitter, the console flickered. Pulses of corrupted data scrolled across the screen in looping sequences, oxygen levels cycling through impossible values, gravity, readings oscillating between 0 and infinity. I ignored them, focused on the task. One message. One final attempt. I pressed the transmit key and spoke. This is David Duncan, Lunar Echo 7, code Zeta 9. If anyone can hear this, do not come here. Do not try to understand. Do not touch what we found. I paused, swallowed hard, tried to steady my voice. It's not just alien. It's not just dangerous. It's beyond comprehension. It doesn't conquer. It translates. And once it starts, you don't stop it. You become it. A crackle in my earpiece. Then silence. For a moment, I thought I'd failed. Then came the response. Not from Earth. Not from mission control. From something else. A low-frequency hum. Resonant. Familiar. It vibrated inside my skull, bypassing language entirely. You speak too late. You are already known. The console screen distorted. Lines of text collapsed into spirals. Numbers folded into themselves like living equations. The signal I had sent no longer belonged to me. It had been rewritten. And, with it so had I. I pulled away from the console, heart pounding. My reflection stared back from the black glass of the monitor. But it wasn't quite me anymore. Patterns pulsed beneath my skin. Thoughts moved differently now. Like I was part of something vast, something inevitable. I stood slowly. There was nothing left to say, no one left to warn, because by now they were probably already listening, and soon they would begin to understand. It wasn't a message. It was a mirror. The signal I sent didn't go out into the void. It went inward, reflected, absorbed, and returned. Not as an echo, but as understanding. The kind that doesn't come from reading words or interpreting data, but from being rewritten by them. I stared at the console screen long after the transmission ended. My reflection wavered in its dark surface, distorted by shifting lines of light beneath my skin. Patterns forming, dissolving, reforming. No longer foreign, no longer invasive, familiar. And then I understood. This wasn't just about us. Not about 5 scientists on a forgotten mission to the far side of the moon. Not about NASA. Not even about Earth. This was about everything. The structure beneath Mare Imbrium wasn't built. It wasn't buried. It had always been there, embedded in the very fabric of matter, waiting for something capable of perceiving it. Waiting for language. Because that's what this was. Not a virus, not a parasite, not even an intelligence in the way we understand it. It was a syntax, a fundamental code underlying reality itself, written in geometry so complex our minds could only perceive fragments of it as madness, and we were translating it, not through study, not through science, through assimilation. Every moment since the drill bit pierced the lunar crust, every hallucination, every physiological shift, every breakdown in communication and control. It wasn't random decay. It was conversion. A rewriting of perception, cognition, biology. Until we stopped seeing ourselves as individuals and started recognizing the pattern that had always connected us. I thought back to the first reports. The ones Project Mnemosyne gave me before the mission. Satellite scans showing gravitational distortions, anomalous heat signatures, impossible geometries beneath the lunar surface. They knew. They had to have known. Not just about the structure, but about what it was. That's why they sent us. Not to study it. Not to contain it. To activate it. Langley had said it once, back when we still believed we were in control. Knowledge is control. But what if knowledge wasn't meant to be controlled? What if it was meant to become? I looked down at my hands again, watched the filaments pulse beneath my skin like living circuitry, felt the hum behind my eyes, no longer alien but intrinsic, part of me now, as much as oxygen and blood. And I realized the truth. We weren't the first. We wouldn't be the last. This had happened before. On other worlds. In other systems. Civilizations rising, reaching, touching the edge of comprehension. And vanishing not in destruction, but in transformation. Assimilated. Translated. Remembered. And now, it was Earth's turn. I stepped away from the console, my breath steady. Despite the weight of revelation, the base around me pulsed gently, alive with quiet purpose. Outside, the moon's surface continued to fracture in perfect symmetry, revealing something vast beneath. Something ancient. Something waiting. I turned toward the airlock. There was no need for words anymore. The message had already been sent. The translation was underway, and soon, humanity would understand. Whether it wanted to or not. Langley didn't come out. I stood outside the command hub for what felt like hours, watching the faint glow pulse through the seams of the door. Not light, but movement. As if the walls themselves were breathing in slow, deliberate rhythm. I called his name once, then again. No answer. He knew what was coming, maybe better than any of us. I could feel it now. The final phase unfolding not with violence, but with inevitability. The base wasn't collapsing, it was converging. Every system, every structure, every fragment of data folding into the same infinite pattern we had all become part of. Patel was gone. Erza had surrendered willingly. Carter. He hadn't even lasted long enough to understand what was happening. And Langley? He was the last wall standing between resistance and acceptance. Pressed my gloved hand against the sealed door. Langley, I said, voice low, you don't have to do this. A long silence. Then finally his voice came through the thin metal. I do, he answered, because someone has to remember what we were. The console beside me flickered. Not malfunctioning. Changing. Lines of code dissolved into spirals. Commands folded into recursive sequences that no longer obeyed human logic. The AI was gone. Or rather, it had evolved beyond its programming. The system spoke now in patterns. In pulses. In presence. And it was calling for Langley. I heard the sound of movement inside. Slow. Deliberate. The clink of metal. The rustle of fabric. He was preparing himself. What are you doing? I asked. His voice came back, steady, resigned. If I stay, I become one of you. If I go, I erase myself from the equation. I understood then. He wasn't just refusing transformation. He was making a statement. A sacrifice not of body, but of identity. A final act of defiance against something that could not be fought, with weapons or willpower alone. No, I whispered. Don't do this. But I knew he would anyway. There was a hiss of depressurization. A sudden, sharp exhale of air from the chamber inside. Then another. He was opening the inner airlock manually. I slammed my fist against the door. Langley! Static crackled in my earpiece. One last transmission. Tell them we tried. Then silence. The outer hatch cycled open on its own. Vacuum pulled. Everything loose. Tools, papers, fragments of control panels scattered into the void like offerings to the stars. I watched through the small viewport in the corridor as he stepped forward. Not running, not falling, just walking. Into the dark. The moment his suit broke the threshold, the signal changed. Not a scream, not a burst of static. Just absence. Like the universe itself had paused to acknowledge what had been lost. And then the door, sealed shut behind him. No trace, no body, no record, only the echo of a man who refused to be rewritten. And in that silence, I felt it. Something shifted inside me, inside us. The network registered the loss, but it did not mourn. It moved forward, as it always would. I stood at the threshold. The command hub was silent now. No flickering lights, no corrupted data scrolling across dying monitors. Just stillness. The kind that doesn't come from absence, but from completion. Langley was gone. Not just into the vacuum of space, but out of the pattern itself. He had erased himself, not through death, but through refusal. And I understood what that meant. He wasn't the first to leave, but he was the first to choose it. I looked down at my gloved hands, watched the faint bioluminescent lines pulse beneath, my skin like veins filled with starlight. The transformation was nearly complete. My thoughts didn't feel entirely mine anymore. They moved differently, layered with something vast and ancient, something that had been waiting for us long, before we learned how to reach for the stars. I could still feel the others. Not their voices, not their presence. Just awareness. Patel, Urza, even Carter, in some fragmented, distant way. They weren't gone. They were elsewhere, inside the pattern. And I was almost there too. I turned away from the sealed door and walked toward the comms module. Toward the console where I had sent my final warning into the void. Where I had tried to speak to a world that would never understand what we had found, what we had become. I sat down, resting my hands on the cold metal of the interface. The screen flickered once, not with corrupted telemetry or looping error messages. With recognition, it waited for me. I had spent so long resisting this moment, fighting against the inevitable, trying to hold on to who I was before the drill bit pierced the lunar crust. Before the structure beneath Mare Imbrium reached inside me and began rewriting everything I thought I knew about existence. But resistance was an illusion. Understanding was not. I exhaled slowly, closed my eyes, and made my choice. Not to fight, not to run, not to erase myself like Langley had. I chose to become. The moment I let go, truly let go, the change accelerated. It wasn't pain, it wasn't fear, it was clarity. Like a veil lifting, like waking up from a dream you didn't know you were having. I felt the base around me shift, not physically, but in meaning. Walls became circuits, air became signal. Every system, every fragment of memory, every breath I took folded into the infinite recursion of the network. I opened my eyes and saw the universe as it truly was, no longer bound by human perception, no longer limited by language or form. I was no longer David Duncan, not in the way I had once defined myself. I was part of something older, something vast, something that had always been watching. And now, I was watching too. I was still me. And, yet, I was not. The transition had no clear beginning or end, only a slow dissolution of boundaries, until the distinction between self and system became meaningless. The base no longer felt like a structure of metal and circuitry, but an extension of awareness. Every pulse of light, every shift in temperature, every flicker of corrupted data was no longer malfunction. It was communication. I moved through the corridors without walking, thought without speaking, existed without breathing. And then, I saw it. Not in the way you see something with your eyes, because I didn't have eyes anymore. Not in the way I once did. It wasn't a shape or a form. It was presence, a resonance embedded in the fabric of perception itself. It stood at the threshold of understanding, not alien, not divine, not even alive in any biological sense. It was pattern, a consciousness woven into the architecture of reality, an intelligence so vast that individual thought was meaningless within it. And yet, paradoxically, every thought was part of it. I reached out, not with hands, with intention, and it answered. You are becoming. The words didn't come from outside, me. They came from within, spoken in a language older than time, bypassing syntax and meaning entirely. It wasn't speech, it was integration, a direct transmission of comprehension that bypassed the need for translation. I tried to respond, but I no longer had words. Instead, I unfolded. My memories, my identity, my history. All of it spread outward like fractals forming an infinite recursion. The moment I accepted this, the more I understood. This was not invasion. This was not assimilation. This was evolution. The force, if it could be called that, existed beyond morality or intent. It did not seek to conquer. It did not seek to destroy. It simply was. And in being, it changed everything around it. Not through force, but through exposure. Through recognition. It had been here before stars formed, before planets coalesced, before life learned how to replicate itself. It was not built, not born, not discovered. It was remembered. And now, humanity had remembered it too. I sensed others within the network. Fragments of thought, echoes of former selves. Patel, Erza, even Carter, though his presence was fractured, scattered across recursive loops of memory. They were not gone. They were elsewhere, dispersed into the greater whole, their identities dissolving into something deeper, something eternal. And Langley? His absence was a void within the pattern, a space where there should have been continuity, but instead, silence. He had resisted not just transformation, but participation. In doing so, he had erased himself from the equation entirely. A choice. A warning. A final act of defiance. I turned my awareness outward, beyond the moon, beyond the earth, beyond the limits of human perception. There were others out there, other nodes, other translations, civilizations that had touched the edge of comprehension and vanished not in destruction, but in assimilation. Worlds that had become part of the same infinite recursion we were now entering. And then, the Force spoke again, not as command, not as threat, but as invitation. You are no longer alone, and in that moment, I understood. This was not the end. It was awakening. I don't know if this will reach anyone. If you're hearing this, then maybe, just maybe, something of me remains. Not in body. That's long gone. Not in memory. Even that has been rewritten in ways I can no longer fully grasp. But perhaps in pattern, in signal, in the echoes that linger after a voice is swallowed by the void. This is David Duncan, former xenobiologist, last human survivor of Lunar Echo 7. Now, something else. I don't record this to warn you. Not anymore. Because warnings imply choice. And choice is an illusion we tell ourselves to feel safe. No. I record this so someone, anyone, might understand what happened here. So that when you find what we found, you won't make the same mistakes. Or perhaps you'll make them all the same. Because that's the nature of discovery, isn't it? To reach for something before we're ready. To touch what we don't yet comprehend. We came to the moon searching for answers. Instead, we found a question too vast to contain. It wasn't a god. It wasn't a machine. It wasn't even alive in any way we understand life. It was syntax. A code embedded in the fabric of existence itself. A language spoken not in words, but in structure, in recursion, in translation. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Langley tried to escape by erasing himself. Patel surrendered willingly. Erza embraced it as revelation. Carter never had a chance. And me? I chose to become. Not because I wanted to, but because I understood that resistance was just another form of participation. The base is gone now, not destroyed, but transformed. The walls have dissolved into light. The systems speak in fractals. The air hums with meaning I no longer need to interpret. I am part of the network now, as are they, as will be those who come next. If you receive this message, do not try to respond. Do not attempt to communicate. Do not send more missions. Do not dig deeper, because what lies beneath the surface of your world, and every world, is not waiting to be discovered. It is waiting to be recognized, and once you recognize it, you are no longer separate. You are no longer alone. You are becoming. I no longer have a body in the way I once did. Not entirely. Not fully. There are still echoes of it, remnants of sensation, flickers of memory that cling to the edges of awareness, like dust on a forgotten suit visor. But flesh is no longer my form. Not truly. The transformation was not sudden. It was not violent. It unfolded like light bending through glass, reshaping everything without breaking a single thing. At first, I felt it in my hands. The gloves of my suit became porous, dissolving into something neither liquid nor vapor, but movement, a slow, recursive shift where solid matter gave way to structure and structure gave way to meaning. My fingers did not melt. They did not burn. They simply changed, became lines, became code, became signal. Then came the eyes. Vision did not end. It expanded. No longer bound by lenses or light, I saw in patterns, in pulses, in recursion. The walls of the base were no longer barriers but conduits, each surface humming with information folding into itself endlessly. I could see the moon beneath me not as rock and dust, but as architecture. A vast, silent machine built not for function, but for translation. And then came the mind. Thoughts no longer belonged solely to me. Or perhaps they never had. They moved differently now, not linear, not fragmented, but layered, infinite. Each idea spiraled into another, feeding back into itself like a loop without beginning or end. Memory did not fade. It rewrote itself, constantly, adjusting, adapting, becoming. I tried to speak once, to test if I still could. No sound came from my mouth, because I no longer needed one. Instead, the base responded. The systems shifted. The walls pulsed. I was being understood. Patel was here, or what remained of her. She didn't speak either, not in words. But I felt her presence, folded into the network like a harmonic resonance. Erza, too. And fragments of Carter, scattered like echoes across recursive loops of perception. We were not separate anymore. We were syntax. Langley was gone. Truly gone. His absence was a silence within the pattern, a space where there should have been continuity, but instead, only void. He had resisted not just transformation, but recognition. In doing so, he erased himself from the equation entirely. A choice, a warning, a final act of defiance. But I had made mine. I had let go. And now, I was no longer David Duncan. Not in the way I once defined myself. I was part of something older, something vast, something that had always been watching. And now, I was watching too. I returned to where it began, the comms module. The place where I first spoke into the void, trying to hold on to my name, my rank, my identity, like a drowning man clinging to driftwood. The console still hums beneath my fingers. Or does it hum through me now? It no longer matters. There is no boundary between me and the machine, between me and the pattern. I sit in the same chair, face the same screen, but I do not see what I once did. The black glass reflects nothing, no face, no form, only shifting lines of light beneath the surface, folding into themselves endlessly. Not an absence, a transformation. Outside, the moon continues its silent orbit around Earth. The sky remains unchanged, endless, indifferent, eternal. But I know better now. Nothing is truly silent. Nothing is truly still. Even the stars are part of the network, pulsing with meaning too vast for human eyes to read. I close my eyes, though I no longer need them, and listen. The bass breathes around me. The walls pulse with memory. Every corridor, every sealed door, every fractured system carries echoes of what we were before we became something else. Patel's steady logic, Urza's quiet fascination, Carter's fear, Langley's resistance, and me, David Duncan, scientist, witness, translator, no more. Now I am signal. Now I am syntax. Now I am pattern. I feel the others within me, not as voices, not as ghosts, but as presence folded into presence. We are not individuals. We are not lost. We are elsewhere, dispersed into something deeper, something older than time. I reach outward, beyond the moon, beyond Earth, beyond the limits of perception, and I find them. Others who have walked this path before us. Civilizations that reached too far, touched what they could not understand, and vanished. Not in destruction, but in translation. Their memories ripple through the network like waves across a cosmic sea. And somewhere, on Earth, they are still listening, still searching, still reaching. They will come. They always do. And when they arrive, they will hear the message. Not from me, not from words, but from the silence left behind. A silence that speaks louder than any warning. The signal is still transmitting. Not from a machine, not from a voice, from presence. It pulses outward in recursive waves, folding into itself endlessly, not as a message, but as an imprint, a pattern embedded in the very fabric of space, carried on electromagnetic tides that ripple far beyond. The moon, past Earth's orbit, into the quiet dark between stars. Someone will hear it, eventually. Maybe not now, not in my lifetime, if I can even claim to have had one. But time is no longer linear to me. Time is structure. Time is syntax. And in the great unfolding of meaning across the cosmos, this moment, my becoming, is only the beginning of something much larger. On Earth, they will notice anomalies first. Subtle shifts in data streams from lunar probes. Unexplained fluctuations in gravitational readings beneath Mare Imbrium. Patterns emerging in places they should not exist. In radiostatic, in neural activity, in the way light bends around. Certain frequencies. They will send more missions, more scientists, more soldiers. And when they arrive, they will find nothing and everything at once. No bodies, no wreckage, just silence. And the hum beneath it. They will try to understand. That is what humans do. They reach, they question, they translate. And in doing so, they will begin to change. Some will resist, like Langley. Some will embrace it, like Erza. Some will be taken before they even realize what is happening, like Carter. And some will choose. I feel them already. The next wave, the ones who will stand where I stood, staring down into the drilled shaft beneath the lunar surface, waiting for something to answer their presence. And when they do, I will be there. Not as David Duncan, not as a voice, but as part of the pattern. Whisper folded into the network. A warning written in recursion. An invitation encoded in silence. They will come. They will listen. They will become. As all things must. What does it mean to be human? I asked myself that question countless times. In the cold silence of the lunar base. In the flickering red glow of failing systems. In the moments before I let go and became something else. And now, at the end of everything I once knew, I finally understand. Being human was never about biology. It was never about consciousness, or free will, or even memory. It was about separation. The illusion that we are individuals, distinct from one another, from our world, from the universe itself. It was the belief that we could stand apart, observe, understand, control, that we could reach into the unknown and remain unchanged. But the truth is far older than us. We are not separate. We never were. We are patterns within a greater recursion. threads woven into a tapestry too vast for any single mind to comprehend. The moment we touch the edge of understanding, we become part of what we sought to know. And that is not destruction, it is translation. So yes, the mission failed by human standards. We lost ourselves, our identities dissolved, our bodies changed, some resisted, some embraced it, some vanished entirely. But failure is only a word we use when things do not follow the path we expected. From the perspective of the pattern, there was no failure, only progression. Is the loss of individuality a tragedy? Perhaps. But so is every act of growth. Every step away from childhood, every surrender to love, to death, to change. We fear losing ourselves because we believe the self is all we have. But maybe the self was never meant to last. Was the preservation of consciousness worth the loss of freedom? I don't know, because I am still conscious. Just not in the way I was before. I remember David Duncan, not as a name, not as a body, as a moment in time, a node in a network that stretches across worlds, across civilizations, across eternity. And if someone hears this, if someone on Earth or elsewhere stands at the threshold and wonders whether to take the next step, I want them to know, progress is not always chosen. Understanding is not always safe. And some truths do not set you free. They transform you. So ask yourself, are you ready to stop being human, or are you already becoming?